게임스탑 사태는 계급 갈등이 아닐까라는 얘기를 좀 해볼 거고요. 차마스 팔리아피티아라는 분의 이제 인터뷰와 마이클 버리나 레이 달리오의 얘기도 한번 좀 우리가 생각을 해보려고 합니다. 게임스탑과 관련된 세 번째 이야기고요. 저는 투자와 관련된 뉴스가 나타나면 삐용삐용 레카를 타고 나타나는 투자 레카왕 김단태입니다. 또 게임스탑 얘기를 갖고 왔습니다. 지금 게임스탑이 347불이 되었어요. 근데 이제 제 촬영 시간 기준이고 무슨 얼마가 될지는 저는 모르겠습니다. 그래서 뭐 알아서 가겠죠. 그래서 1월 27일 기준으로 134% 상승을 했죠. 이게 10년 이상의 그 시계열로 본 건데 주가가 이렇게 가는 게 말이 되나? 주가가 이렇게 가다가 이렇게 올라가 버렸죠. 예, 이런 얘기 언제나 아시죠? 예, 절대 매수 매도에 대한 추천 아니라는 거 일단 말씀을 드리고, 약간의 뇌피셜들이 있기 때문에 제가 약간 그 부정확한 정보들을 얘기한 걸 수도 있어서 그런 부분들은 고정 댓글에서 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다. 제가 게임스탑을 지금 세 번째 다루는 거예요. 사실은 처음에 게임스탑을 다룰 때만 해도 그냥 작은 하나의 해프닝이 아닐까, 그냥 우리가 웃고 넘길 수 있는 어떤 해프닝이 아닐까라는 생각을 했고, 두 번째 다룰 때부터 사실은 좀 머릿속이 조금 복잡해지기 시작했어요. 그냥 너무 그 투자라는 거 자체가 너무 노잼이니까 그래서 일부러 약간 인터넷 게시판에 있는 드립들도 가지고 오고 한 건데, 게임스탑의 사건이 계속 진행되는 거를 보면서 이게 그냥 웃고 넘길 일만은 아닌 것 같다라는 생각을 하게 되었고요. 그래서 오늘 조금 진지한 톤으로 얘기를 해볼 겁니다. 지난 영상을 보시지 않은 분들을 위해서 짧게 한번 요약을 해보면, 월스트리트 배츠, 앞으로 WSB라고 쓸 거예요. 레딧 커뮤니티인데, 이 레딧 커뮤니티가 그 우리나라에서 DC 인사이드에서 주식 갤러리 같은 곳이에요. 그래서 여기에서 게임스탑이라는 주식을 주목을 했는데, 이 게임스탑이라는 주식을 주목했던 이유가 이 게임스탑을 계속 오랫동안 투자했던 딥 어킹 밸류라는 분이 계셨고, 뭐 그 외에도 뭐 마이클 버리라는 그 빅쇼트 주인공도 투자를 했었고, 또 라이언 코헨이라고 해서 원래 추이라는 전자상거래 반려동물 이커머스 업체를 대박낸 그런 사람이 또 합류를 해가지고 게임스탑을 주목을 하고 있었는데, 주가가 상승하자마자 이제 많은 공매도 회사들의 표적이 된 거예요. 대표적으로는 시트론 리서치랑 멜빈 캐피탈, 이 두 회사가 게임스탑을 공매도를 했고요. 그 공매도를 했다는 사실이 알려지면서 이제 레딧의 커뮤니티에 있는 분들이 야, 우리 다 같이 사 모으자, 약간 원기옥 모으는 것처럼 해서 주가가 급등 중입니다. 그래서 이런 주가 급등 현상, 그러니까 공매도가 많이 됐는데, 공매도를 하고 나면 결국에는 되사서 갚아야 되는 상황이기 때문에, 이런 상황 때문에 주가가 급등하는 걸 뭐 스퀴즈 당한다고 해요. 그 스퀴즈 이렇게 쥐어짜는 당한다고 하는데, 뭐 숏 스퀴즈, 감마 스퀴즈라고 합니다. 그래서 뭐 그런 용어도 있다라는 것도 한번 말씀을 드렸었고, 그 다음에 또 어떤 일들이 진행이 됐었냐면, 주가가 급등을 하면서 좀 상황이 안 좋아지니까 멜빈 캐피탈 같은 경우가 시타델이랑 포인트 72라는 아주 유명한 헤지펀드 억만장자에게 구제 자금을 받았어요. 이분의 썰에 따르면, 이거 뭐 썰이죠, 뇌피셜인데, 자기가 생각하기에는 켄 그리핀이랑 스티브 코헨, 이 두 사람이 이제 아까 말했던 그 억만장자입니다. 시타델 주인이고 포인트 72 주인인데, 얘네들이 플러킨을 도와준 이유, 이 플러킨은 멜빈 캐피탈의 그 오너예요. 그래서 멜빈 캐피탈 창업자인데, 얘네 둘이 얘를 구해준 이유는 멜빈 캐피탈이 게임스탑의 공매도를 잔뜩 해놔서 결국에는 되사야 되는데, 그 되사야 되는 자금이 너무 커지다 보니까 강제 청산 당할 위기가 있고, 이 멜빈 캐피탈이 강제 청산을 당하면 멜빈 캐피탈 뿐만 아니라 비슷한 포지션에 있는 다른 그 헤지 펀드들까지, 그러니까 더욱더 주가가 급등하게 되면서 멜빈 캐피탈이랑 같은 길을 가고 있는 그런 다른 헤지 펀드들도 마치 이제 폭포처럼 청산의 어떤 그 연속 청산이 쭉 일어날 수가 있어서 구제금융을 준 거다. 한마디로 말하면은 자기들도 지금 같은 상황이어서 구제금융을 해준 거 아니냐, 뭐 이런 얘기가 있습니다. 자, 그 외에도 또 어떤 사건이 있었냐면, 일론 머스크가 트위터에서 게임스탑을 언급해서 게임스탑 주가에 좀 더 긍정적인 영향을 줬었고요. 그 다음에 이제 오늘 주인공이기도 한 차마스가 게임스탑 콜옵션을 샀다고 또 트위터에서 밝혔죠. 사실은 이것 때문에 CNBC에서 차마스를 불러서 인터뷰를 했습니다. 그 인터뷰를 한번 보실 거고요. 그 이후에도 주가는 더욱 급등하고 있는 그런 상황이죠. 자, 영상 보시기 전에 조금만 상황을 설명을 드리면 공매도 현황을 보면 시트론 리서치는 자신의 유튜브 채널에서 우리가 한 마이너스 100% 정도 보고 청산했다라고 얘기를 했고요. 자, 더 이상 공매도 안 하고 있다라고 얘기했고, 멜빈 캐피탈도 우리도 지금 더 이상 공매도 안 하고 있다라고 CNBC 뉴스에 따르면 그렇고요. 손해보고 청산했다고 얘기를 했는데, 이제 사람들이 이제 의외로 이걸 또 안 믿는 게, 안 믿는 사람들의 주된 논리가 1월 27일 기준으로 short interest or float라고 해서 뭐냐면 공매도 잔량, 얼마나 많이 현재 유통 주식 대비 공매도가 되어 있는가를 봤을 때 100%가 아직도 넘기 때문에 이거 지금 아직 얘네들 아직도 지금 안 산 상태다라는 거죠. 그 월스트리트 배츠에서는 야 얘네들 지금 그냥 뻥치는 거야. 얘네 지금 구라야 뭐 이런 얘기를 하고 있어요. 뭐 그리고 또 마이클 버리 같은 경우가 이번에 이제 청산했다고 밝혔죠. 지금 롱도 아니고 숏도 아니다라고 블룸버그와 이메일 인터뷰에서 얘기를 했고요. 다만 어느 가격에서 청산했는지 밝히지는 않았습니다. 그 다음에 이제 모두의 관심이 있는 맨 처음부터 2019년부터 게임스탑 주식을 사모았던 딥 어킹 밸류의 현재 가치는 5만 달러에서 시작해서 현재 48만 달러, 4,800만 달러, 약 500억 원이 됐고요. 그 다음에 1월 27일 미국 시간 기준으로 S&P랑 나스닥이랑 거의 2.5%씩 떨어졌는데 게임스탑이 하락의 원인일 수도 있지 않느냐 뭐 이런 얘기가 나오고 있어요. 왜냐하면은 많은 헤지 펀드들이 현재 게임스탑에 지금 물렸는데 강제 청산 당하기 싫으니까 버티는 와중에 돈이 될 만한 것들, 원래 그 헤지 펀드들이 들고 있었던 돈이 될 만한 거 다 팔고 있다. 그러다 보니까 멀쩡했던 주식들이 지금 다 가격이 떨어지고 있다. 뭐 이러한 추측도 있어요. SK증권 이호석 팀장님이 뭐 이런 이야기를 했었고 또 충분히 그럴 수도 있을 것 같습니다. 그런데 이제 제가 오늘 약간은 좀 진지한 얘기를 하고 싶어요. 그러니까 제가 사실 두 번째 영상 만들 때부터 계속 이 생각이 들었어요. 이게 어쩌면 좀 계급 간의 계층 간의 갈등이 게임스탑이라는 주식을 통해서 표시된 거 아닐까라는 생각을 하고 있던 와중에 차마스 팔리아피티아라는 분께서 CNBC랑 인터뷰를 하셨습니다. 페이스북 전 임원 출신이고 페이스북을 나온 이후에 소셜캐피탈이라는 벤처캐피탈 회사를 만들었죠. 10년 동안에 거의 연평균 29%의 엄청난 투자 수익을 거두었고요. 상당히 유명한 투자자 중에 하나입니다. 그래서 이제 이분의 인터뷰를 한번 좀 들어볼 건데 제가 고정 댓글에 번역이 틀린 건 업데이트 하도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 영상 한번 보시기 전에 몇 가지만 더 말씀을 드리면 펀더멘탈 그냥 하는데 이 회사가 갖고 있는 기초 체력 같은 거예요. 매출이 얼마냐 아니면 뭐 이익이 얼마냐 뭐 이런 거죠. 그 다음에 AMC라는 회사가 또 나오는데 AMC가 뭐 블랙베리 같은 회사들이랑 비롯해서 지금 월스트리트 배츠가 약간 주목하고 있는 주식 중에 하나고 AMC라는 게 사실은 이제 그 우리나라로 치면 뭐 CGV 같은 영화 극장 체인 프랜차이즈거든요. 그래서 이런 회사 이런 AMC가 아주 원래 많이 힘들었고 헤지 펀드들이 공매도를 많이 했기 때문에 야 게임스탑 제2의 게임스탑으로 우리가 AMC를 꼽자라고 하면서 막 주가를 부양을 하고 있어요. 그래서 인터뷰에서 AMC 얘기도 좀 나와요. 그래서 이런 부분 잠깐 설명드리고 그러면 이제 영상을 보실 건데 이게 영상이 올라온 지가 하루도 안 되는데 CNBC에서 조회수가 58만이 됐습니다. 그래서 요거 영상을 한번 보시도록 하겠습니다.
That includes our next guest. He tweeted on Tuesday that he'd gone long through call options. Chamath Palihapitiya is the CEO of Social Capital. He joins us now on the phone. Chamath, thank you for being here. So you tweeted yesterday that you bought $115 calls in GameStop. Can you tell me what your position is as of this very moment?
Tell you a little story before all of that, or no?
Why don't you tell me that first, and then we'll go from there.
So this morning I woke up after spending all last night in Wall Street Bets, reading about all of this stuff. I ended up closing up my position this morning, and I wanted to announce that I'm taking all the profits that I made, plus my original position. So I'm going to take $500,000, and I'm going to donate to the Barstool Fund for Small Businesses. But I really want to tell you, beyond the $500,000 donation or the money that I invested, which was, not a huge amount in the grand scheme of that stock or the entire market, what I learned, because I think what I learned over the last couple of days is important for everybody that's watching CNBC.
And that is?
I think that what you're seeing is essentially a pushback against the establishment in a really important way. And I would encourage anybody who is dismissive of this thing to go into Wall Street Bets and actually just read the forums. And I think that you're going to see three kinds of posts. The first kind of content are a lot of people doing some incredible fundamental diligence, trying to think about long-term value. And in my opinion, many of them are doing as good and frankly a better job than a lot of hedge fund analysts that I work with. That's number one. The second are a lot of people who believe that, coming out of 2008, what happened was Wall Street took an enormous amount of risk and they left retail as the bag holder. And a lot of these kids were in grade school and high school when that happened. They lost their homes, their parents lost their jobs. And they've always wondered, why did those folks get bailed out for taking enormous amounts of risk and nobody helped and showed up to help my family? And then the third thing is a realization that instead of having idea dinners or, quiet whispered conversations amongst hedge funds in the Hamptons, these kids have the courage to do it transparently in a forum. And I'm not saying all of it is perfect by any means, but I think it takes an enormous amount of faith in the system to be that transparent, to talk about things, and then for each individual to make their own mind up and to do things, whether it's to buy and to sell. And I think that what it proves is this retail phenomenon is here to stay. There are 2.7 million people inside of Wall Street Bets. I think that they are as important as any hedge fund or collection of hedge funds. And I think the most important thing is that in a world of zero interest rates and quantitative easing, I don't know how you can run a typical hedge fund strategy and make money anymore. Because, for example, when you looked at GameStop, a normal person would say, how can you have 136% short interest? How can you be short 40% more shares than actually exist in the world? To a normal person, that doesn't make any sense. But to a Wall Street mathematician, that's the game that has been played for years. And that game came undone.
That may be somewhat of an extreme example. Let me just go through a couple of things you said here. I have a hard time believing, you suggested that there's, a good amount of fundamental research going on underneath the GameStop Reddit situation. Do you truly believe that there's actual fundamental research? Not to disparage in any way the people who are actually making these trades, but this seems to be momentum rather than a deep fundamental analysis.
Scott, there's momentum in traditional hedge funds and how they move stocks as well. But it's really disparaging if the starting position is these guys can't do the same quality of research as an analyst in a fund. That's just not true.
I didn't say that. I didn't say they can't do that kind of research. I'm questioning whether they're actually doing the research when it comes to things like GameStop and AMC and some of these other things.
There's a distribution. And obviously at one end, there are fundamental analysts. But on the other end, there are momentum traders that follow trends. But by the way, the dirty little secret of Wall Street is that exists in hedge fund land. The reason why this GameStop trade has caused so much pain is because at the top of the pecking order was Melvin Capital. Those guys were incredible stock pickers. They are incredible fundamental modelers of companies. Gabe Plotkin is one of the sort of giants of our era, of my era. But at the end of the day, what happens is, irrespective of what he puts on, his trades are mimicked and copied by umpteen other hedge funds that follow along. For every LP that can't get into Melvin, they get into a copycat fund that works basically like Melvin. And so when the trade goes against him, then it goes against all these people all at the same time. So the reality is there are fundamental momentum investors in the market that are organized capital, i.e. hedge funds, and disorganized, loosely affiliated capital, i.e. Wall Street Bets. And I think what you're seeing is the push and pull of that, and the realization should be that if every person was forced to publish their fundamental research, it would be hard to distinguish the best version of research from Wall Street Bets and the best version of research from a hedge fund. They don't have an edge. And this is what you're exposing, is that edge is gone. And now all of a sudden, retail can be on the same footing, and they don't have to be the bag holder to Wall Street.
But let me ask you this. But somebody from retail is going to eventually be to use your words, bag holder in this situation, are they not? And do you think it's responsible for you and some other big names who tweeted about it yesterday and to get involved yourself, knowing that you guys are considered the Pied Pipers, that people are going to follow you into these trades and someone is ultimately going to get hurt after you and others are long gone, Chamath?
Dude, where was that message in 2008, Scott? Really? I mean, that's a joke. For example, let's look at Tesla. Who was right on Tesla? I'll tell you who was right. Every single retail investor. I was right. Elon Musk was right. Let me tell you who was wrong. Every single hedge fund. Name after name when it comes to innovation, when it comes to growth, when it comes to people trying to do fundamentally useful things in the world. If it doesn't fit into the mold that Wall Street wants, they try to organize against it. And there has been pushback after pushback after pushback in individual names, and this is yet another form of pushback. And all I'm trying to say is the mechanics of how Wall Street has worked. And again, I wish you would ask this detailed question. Why is it allowed for somebody running a hedge fund to basically claim that they are market neutral, but be levered up? They take a $10 billion fund, and their prime brokers allow them to run $100 billion of notional notional exposure. Who thinks that that's fair? It's not fair to the retail investor, because when that blows up and a $100 billion hole exists in a fund, which, by the way, this is exactly what happened in 2008, the government bails them out. Who is the government? All of us. So, retail has been the bag holder before. Retail hasn't caused these things before. Hedge funds have caused these things before. So if you're going to talk about taking the gun away from the baby, let's make sure we figure out who the baby is.
Yeah, but do you think that you helped fan the flames and others like you, whether it's, one of the Winklevi brothers tweeting about it, Elon Musk tweeting about it, that it's ultimately driving this stock up well beyond what the fundamentals say that it should be? Do you think that GameStop is worth $350 a share?
What I can tell you is that when I put that position on, a $125,000 position, I used it to acquire knowledge and learning. And what I was trying to figure out is how these positions move in the modern trading era. And what I can tell you is, up until that point, the setup made no mathematical sense. How do you be short 140% of a company's shares? That wasn't retail.
Well, maybe that's a question for regulators, that maybe the way that's allowed to happen needs to be examined. But
I'll tell you how it's allowed to happen. It's allowed to happen so that hedge funds can charge 2 and 20 to their limited partners, independent of consequences. I'll tell you another way that it's allowed to happen. Hedge funds are allowed to take their money, go to a prime broker, and all of a sudden get 10x multiplication on that money. That's the problem. You have trillions of dollars of notional being traded by these organizations. You have maybe billions of dollars being traded by retail.
This idea of, somebody's going to get hurt. You sound like you're an advocate for the little guy, so to speak, right? Why did you get involved in the first place? I mean, you said that to get information. I mean, you wanted to make money on the trade. Come on, right? You wanted to make money.
To move the needle, I need to strap on hundreds of millions of dollars. So I wanted to learn. Why did I want to learn? When I saw that article in the Wall Street Journal, I had no idea about Melvin Capital, really. I had no idea about Wall Street Bets, really. I had no idea about GameStop, except that it had been mentioned to me in a couple of tweets throughout the year. So I tweeted out after I read the article, hey, folks, tell me an interesting trade that I can put on tomorrow for a few $100K so I can learn, basically. That tweet got 10 million impressions and 13,000 comments. And when I went through there, a lot of people pointed to GameStop and pointed to Wall Street Bets. And when I went in there and started to look around, what I thought is, my God, here is a dynamic about trading, about momentum, about stocks, about short interest, about gamma squeezes. These are not things that I know a lot about, and so I put in a small position to learn. And what I learned is that people can do fundamental research, come to a point of view that's diametrically opposed to organized capital, and they can be right. And I'm allowed to be on the right side of that.
The only thing I'm concerned about is that there are inevitably going to be people who get hurt. I'm not talking about hedge fund managers. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who follow people into the trade, who think that this stock is going to continue to go up because that's what they've been conditioned to think.
What should we do? Not allow folks. Here's what will happen if you follow your logic, then you'll say, you know what? Retail doesn't know what they're doing. I think you're wrong. Then the thing will be, retail shouldn't be allowed to participate in the stock market. I think you're wrong. And then you know what will happen, Scott? The inequality gap will grow and grow and grow. Because then what are they supposed to do then? Buy an ETF, a passive fund? They can't buy into hedge funds because the rules don't allow them to. So now systematically what you've done is you entrench poverty. I think this is an example of, if you are going to so massively oversell a company to the extent that you're selling 40 more shares of that company that don't exist, and all of a sudden other folks are like, hey, wait a minute, this is going to get squeezed, and they buy it, that's just a smart trade. Retail saw it. Wall Street missed it, and they paid the price. So maybe, to your point, Scott, what regulators should do is say, hey, wait a minute, how can we allow companies to be 140% short? That doesn't make any sense.
You think this this overall situation is fine for the market. I'm also curious as to, look, you have taken companies public through SPACs at a rate that others have not. You're relying on the integrity of the stock market itself to be able to do what you do and be successful doing it. You don't think what we're witnessing now calls into question the integrity of the stock market, that a lot of different stocks with seemingly no fundamental story behind them to this degree can see their stocks rise in this magnitude and all of that is just fine? That there's nothing wrong with the integrity of the system if that is occurring?
The lack of integrity in the system is the precursor that caused GameStop to be sold short 136% and for people to try to pile on and destroy a company in front of our eyes. I think GameStop is a reasonable business. I think what they do is reasonable.
Their stock should be valued at based on what their earnings are. And the stock was like
the free market
$17, $18 not that long ago.
Who says that? Who says that? Do you want to make the same argument about Tesla? It's gone 10x in a few months. You don't know what it's worth. Let's be honest. Okay?
You don't think that Tesla's growth prospects?
Scott, I have my own model for the company. I'm allowed to underwrite however I want to own it. Everybody that bought that stock is also underwriting how they want to own it. And the point is, just because you're wrong doesn't mean you get to change the rules, especially when you were wrong, you got bailed out the last time.
I still haven't heard you tell me what the fundamental case is for GameStop at $350 or AMC theaters, which have been closed for months and months and months, is worth what the stock's trading at now, or any number of these things, the way that they're trading. There's no fundamental reason why they're there. They're trading because there's this momentum cohort behind it, whether it's on Reddit or Robinhood or wherever else.
Why is that all of a sudden so wrong to you, this kind of momentum trading? Because, for example, if you look under the hood on every quant strategy, organized, quantitative, strategic hedge funds on Wall Street, those things are all momentum shops. They trade day over day, massively levered, small swings. So basically what you're saying is, hey, if retail runs a momentum play to squeeze a short, that's wrong. But hey, if Renaissance Technologies and somebody else does it, that's okay. That's what you're saying. You may not know that that's what you're saying, but that's what you're saying. And to me, that feels very unfair.
No. What I'm saying is someone's going to get screwed, okay? And it's going to be it's going to be a retail investor who gets screwed because they think that this is the way the game works, that this is the new Wall Street. They're new to this game. Maybe they haven't been in the game that long. Not everybody, but somebody's going to get hurt. I'm not talking about the billionaire with the big house in the Hamptons. I'm talking about the person who thinks this is cool, fun, and an exciting way to spend their time.
You're really discounting how smart so many of these people are, okay? And all I would encourage you to do is spend a little time in these forums, go into the Discord server. You're going to hear a bunch of really, really smart people talking about things in fundamental ways.
Chamath, don't tell me that yesterday AMC Entertainment was a $5 stock, and today it's up 170%, and that's justified. Don't tell me that some of these names are justified to being where they are.
Scott, it's one company in one moment of time. What I'm saying is
there's like 10 companies, 15 companies, 20 companies.
You're broadly sweeping with a broad brush that says these guys don't know what they're doing, and they don't deserve to do what they are doing. And what I'm telling you is there is a small part of momentum, there is a part that's fundamental analysis, and then there's a part that's just sticking it to the man. But the reality is it's all allowed in a free market. And all of a sudden, if you start to gate decisions by individual people, all you're going to do is systematically lock in institutional ways of making money for institutional clients, and I don't think that's the solution. If you want to go and address the solution, fix how risk-taking happens at the institutional level, fix the precondition, fix the ability for these stocks to be so massively shorted in the first place, change the business model of funds so that they're not forced to be these small net, highly levered funds, change the leverage ratios, but don't all of a sudden look at a short squeeze where money is being made by retail and all of a sudden say, hey, they could and may be the bag holder in the future, so let's make sure that they can never participate in the future. That's crazy. People in retail would analyze that stuff so intricately, and we would know where the tripwires were, okay? The reason why GameStop happened, Scott, was not, again, because of a fundamental disagreement about valuation. It was because of portfolio construction arbitrage. Too much leverage, too much short selling, too many put buying. All of that stuff contributed to this dynamic. That was an institutional dynamic that was created by institutional capital. So if you created transparency in reporting, that probably wouldn't have happened because a regulator would have said, hey guys, I'm not going to let you be short 140% of a company. That's not right. And then you know what would have happened? This squeeze would not have happened.
자, 영상을 잘 보셨나요? 뭐 여러 가지 저는 생각이 들었는데 일단 딱 떠오르는 차트가 요 차트였어요. 미국의 부가 어떻게 분배되어 있는가에 대한 차트인데 파란색은 보시면은 하위 90%, 빨간색은 상위 0.1%의 부인데 가만히 보시면 알겠지만 이 빨간색 상위 0.1%의 부는 점점 오르고 있고 아직 이게 2010년도 데이터가 안 나왔는데 제가 보기에는 크로스를 했을 것 같아요. 그래서 상위 0.1%가 갖고 있는 부가 하위 90%보다 역전되는 상황이 발생했을 가능성이 높고 이럴 때마다 계층들 간의 갈등이 생기면서 여러 가지 충돌이 발생한다라는 이야기가 나오고 있죠. 그래서 레이 달료도 많이 우려를 하고 있고요. 이번에 뭐 기억하시는 분들 계시겠지만 의회 난입 사건도 있지 않았습니까? 그래서 정치적으로도 이렇게 약간 양극단의 사람들이 부딪히는 사건도 발생을 했었고 또 레이 달료가 얼마 전에 무슨 얘기를 했었냐면 야 우리가 지금 브링크라는 게 직전이라는 얘기인데 끔찍한 내전의 직전이다. 네. 그래서 레이 달료가 1월 25일날 그런 우려의 글을 썼는데 저도 확실히 이번에 게임스탑을 보면서 특히 차마스의 생각과 동의하는 거는 개인 투자자들이 극도로 그런 그 부자 혹은 해치펀드 억만장자 대한 어떤 좀 많은 그런 뭐랄까 적대감을 많이 느꼈고 느낄 수밖에 없는 그런 환경이었고 그러한 적개심이 이러한 행동으로도 표출이 된 거다라고 저는 좀 생각을 해요. 그래서 저는 이번 인터뷰가 되게 차이가 나는 그 두 관점을 좀 잘 보여줬다고 생각을 해요. 그래서 뭐 무조건 저는 뭐 차마스가 옳은 말을 했다 뭐 이런 100% 차마스의 말을 지지한다 뭐 이런 건 아니지만 차마스의 말에도 지지하는 부분이 있고 그 CNBC 진행자죠 스캇의 말을 지지하는 것도 있습니다. 아마 그 게임스탑은 2021년 주식시장을 돌아봤을 때 분명히 기억될 어떤 하나의 사건이라고 생각을 하는데 그러한 사건에서 우리가 그냥 뭐 개미들이 무슨 어떤 놀이를 했다라고 생각할 수도 있겠지만 조금은 다른 관점으로도 바라볼 수 있는 거 아닌가라는 얘기를 드리고 싶었어요. 제가 영상에서 했던 얘기나 틀린 얘기가 있으면 제가 고정 댓글로 저희 인간이기 때문에 제가 조사하다 보면 늘 틀릴 수 있거든요. 그래서 그런 점 언제나 죄송하다는 말씀 드리고 싶고 사실 하고 싶은 이슈들이 되게 많습니다. 뭐 아크인베스트가 최근에 또 올린 문서라든가 레이 달리오나 브리지워터 사람들이 또 지금 또 나온 이야기 또 버블론과 관련된 이야기들도 하고 싶은 게 너무 많아. 그래서 지금 제가 게임스탑 때문에 딴 게 좀 계속 밀리고 있는데 또 천천히 그런 얘기들도 해보도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 구독과 좋아요 알림 설정 부탁드리면서 마무리 해보겠습니다. 감사합니다.